welcome to the stage FBI Director Christopher Wray.
All right, well, afternoon, everybody. First, wanted to thank Kevin for hosting this conference and for inviting me here to speak with all of you today. Anytime so many leaders from the private sector and the government and around the world, both managers and frontline defenders, all get together in one room, cyberspace becomes a little bit safer. And I firmly believe that the best way to build our collective defense is by having dialogue about the threats we're seeing and having creative conversations about the ways that we can work together to stay ahead of them, which I should add is explicitly the FBI's vision, to stay ahead of the threat. And I understand you've already been discussing ways to do just that, hearing from Kevin and a threat intelligence panel earlier, and with plenty of other events over the next couple of days. But I'd like to spend my time with you this afternoon talking about the FBI's strategy to counter threats in cyberspace, what those threats are that we're countering, and giving you a couple of examples of how we form what we like to think of as a virtuous cycle with our partners, both foreign and domestic, across government and the private sector, to use the information we receive to take the fight to our adversaries and to protect each other. Because everybody here knows it's simply not an option to sit back on our heels in today's environment. And my hope is I can get you leaving here feeling encouraged by what we at the FBI are doing and wanting to be a part of that virtuous cycle. You know, when the FBI was born 115 years ago, we could never have predicted the threats that we're facing today. You know, back in 1908, we were focused on the first Model Ts hitting the streets and celebrating the Chicago Cubs' second straight World Series title, which was sure to be the beginning of a dynasty. But if there's one thing we at the FBI have excelled at throughout our history, it's innovation. And as the threats have changed, we've changed with them. One of the biggest inflection points in the Bureau's history, of course, was September 11th, 2001. And last week, we commemorated yet another anniversary of that tragedy, a day that dramatically changed the FBI's work and the way we do it, maybe more than any other. Those attacks showed us how much our nation's safety depends on partnerships and on information sharing. So in the aftermath of 9/11, we made innovative changes that started in our counterterrorism program, and since then have come to inform every type of investigation we conduct in every community we serve, and cyberspace is no exception. For more than 2 decades now, we've had an entire cyber division with cyber squads spread all across the country throughout our 56 field offices, all devoted to identifying and mitigating cyber threats. So while this topic is not new to us at the FBI, our approach to countering the cyber threat has certainly changed over time. Today, our strategy is informed by where we sit at the center of a cyber ecosystem that stretches from, on the defensive side, most importantly, the private sector, but also sector risk management agencies and CISA, all the way over to the NSA, CIA, Cybercom, and our foreign partners on the offensive side. What the FBI does is take in information from partners across that spectrum, investigate, develop leads, and share what we have with whoever can use that information to have the greatest impact on our adversaries. That might be a foreign law enforcement agency or intelligence service joining an operation with us. It might be NSA, it might be CISA. Very often, especially these days, very often it's the private sector. Whether that's a specific victim that needs a heads up, or a whole industry we can warn through a bulletin, or increasingly a provider or other sophisticated partner actually joining one of our operations. Our goal is to plan and conduct joint sequenced operations where we're all on the same page and each step is taken strategically with purpose, where it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as the job gets done. Now, often, the FBI is the agency in the best position to make an impact because we do have a wide and unique combination of both law enforcement and intelligence authorities, and we're using every one of those authorities and every combination of our tools to impose the greatest possible costs on our enemies. We're doing that by going after the actors and the services that support them, their finances, their communications, their malware, their infrastructure. Like earlier this year when we announced the culmination of a 1.5-year-long campaign to disrupt the Hive ransomware group. Hive had been extorting victims all around the globe, but we silently and secretly gained and exploited access to their control panel. In effect, we hacked the hackers. And we used our access to help Hive victims decrypt their networks, saving them about $130 million in ransom payments. And then, working with our European partners, we were able to seize Hive's servers and websites, shutting down the criminal group's ability to function. Now, we know that these operations often are not going to completely eradicate the threats we're facing, so the process continues and has to continue. When we do get information about the threat from one company, we work hard to develop analysis about who the adversary is, what they're doing, and where, why, and how they're doing it, all while taking pains to try to protect that company's identity. And then we pass what we've developed to our partners, and they ball that up with what they know and their reporting, and in return provide us with even more information and actionable leads, enhancing our global investigations. Ultimately, that helps us discover malicious infrastructure that we can target. It helps us discover victims, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that we can help because of what victim 1 did. It helps us run new operations with new partners against the same adversary. And then the process repeats itself. And that's that virtuous cycle I mentioned earlier. And it's only possible when we're all working together. Each piece of data is one part of a larger, longer-term puzzle. And while by its very nature, work like that is never going to be complete, we've had some real successes in recent years. Take the operation we executed last year when we remotely disrupted Cyclops Blink, a widespread botnet built by Russia's GRU, its military intelligence agency, before the botnet could do any harm. And we did that by creatively combining a traditional federal search warrant and extraterritorial law enforcement authorities. But we were only as successful as we were because of willing and able private sector participation. In that case, the GRU's sandworm team had managed to implant malware on thousands of firewall devices worldwide. Those devices were largely used by small and medium-sized businesses and produced by WatchGuard Technologies. But we were able to alert WatchGuard about the malware targeting their devices and collect additional samples from other victims. And that allowed us to reverse engineer the malware and develop and execute a pretty sophisticated technical operation, severing the GRU's ability to communicate with the botnet's command and control layer, all while working with CISA and with WatchGuard on mitigation efforts. Because of that collaboration, we were ultimately able to cut off the GRU's ability to control the botnet, remove the malware from the affected devices, and shut the door on our way out so the Russians couldn't get back in. That kind of collaborative public-private operation is the present and the future for the FBI. And it's only going to become more important as the threats continue to evolve, just as they have for the past 115 years. Because the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that cyber criminals and nation states use to attack our networks and our digitally connected way of life are constantly evolving. The intelligence and operational briefings I get from our team every day, I can tell you, make it pretty clear, as I'm sure this group can guess, that our cyber program is where we're facing some of our most complex, most severe, and most rapidly evolving threats. And what our team knows, and what everybody in this room knows, is that today's cyber threats are more pervasive, hit a wider array of victims, and carry the potential for greater damage than ever before. On top of that, there always seems to be a new danger on the horizon. Now, of course, at the front of everybody's minds today are the artificial intelligence capabilities being developed here in the US and around the world. And I'm sure that none of you are going to be shocked to hear that AI is ripe for potential abuses and that criminals and hostile foreign governments are already exploiting that technology. And while generative AI can certainly save law-abiding citizens time by automating tasks, it can also make it easier for bad guys to do things like generate deep fakes and malicious code, and can provide a tool for threat actors to develop increasingly powerful, sophisticated, customizable, and scalable capabilities. So to stay ahead of the threat, at the FBI, we're determining how we can ethically and legally leverage AI to do our jobs. But we're also identifying and tracking our adversaries and criminals' uses of AI and protecting American innovation in the AI arena. Because, as we've been telling anybody who will listen, the Chinese government has been stealing American intellectual property and data for years. And you can be sure that they're not going to stop now and sit back and watch while American companies develop technologies that can change the world. China already has a bigger hacking program than that of every other major nation combined. In fact, if I took every single one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts and devoted them exclusively just to China, Chinese hackers would still outnumber our cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1. Just say that again, 50 to 1. With AI, China is now in a position to try to close the cycle, to use the fruits of their widespread hacking to power, with AI, even more powerful hacking efforts. And it's not just China. The Russian, Iranian, and North Korean cyber programs are also relentless. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to discern where cyber criminal activity ends and adversarial nation-state activity begins. Like when we see foreign intelligence officers moonlighting, making money on the side through cybercrime, or hackers who are profit-minded criminals by day and state-sponsored by night, or nation-states using cyber criminal tools to conduct state-sponsored attacks because they think it's going to give them some plausible deniability or hide who's really behind the attacks. These threats are why we want and need your help. And when we work together, we're able to strike some pretty serious blows against these actors. Just last month, we announced the results of a worldwide FBI-led operation that crippled QuackBot, one of the longest-running botnets the world had ever seen. The botnet compromised everything from financial institutions on the East Coast to a critical infrastructure government contractor in the Midwest to a medical device manufacturer on the West Coast. It was used by cyber criminals to attack a publishing company a couple years ago, which then had to pay $4.9 million in ransom. And last year, malicious actors used the botnet to steal gigabytes of private information from a healthcare provider and later leaked that information on the dark web. The FBI and our partners stepped in. And working with 5 other countries, we neutralized Quackbot's command and control servers, redirected botnet traffic to an FBI-controlled server, quickly notified victims that they'd been compromised, removed Quackbot malware from infected victims, seized and dismantled the botnet's support infrastructure, and seized millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. Those are those key services that I mentioned earlier that we're targeting. So even though this botnet was one of the world's largest, we showed that our own network and our own capabilities are more powerful. And we're going to continue using all lawful methods to put constant, proactive pressure on our adversaries. We're going to go after all parts of their organization and all parts of their operations. And we're going to keep imposing consequences for their illegal actions. So I hope all this has been informative, but I also hope it's shown you the benefits of working with the FBI, which I will admit is part of why I'm here today, to recruit you to partner with us. Now, one more plug. Just by coming here this week, it's clear that you and your organizations take cybersecurity seriously and share our goal of making cyberspace a safer place for everybody. So you've likely already been planning ahead for when you're targeted or compromised by a cyber attack. But to take that one step further, my request is not just that you make an incident response plan, but that you make us at the FBI part of that incident response plan. Now, we know the private sector hasn't always been excited about working with federal law enforcement, but when you contact us about an intrusion, we're not going to be showing up in raid jackets. Instead, we're going to be treating you like the victims you are, just like we treat all victims of all crimes. And to make that even easier, I would urge you to give our folks a call today and build a relationship with your local FBI field office, and do it now. If you know who to call, and we know who you are, that's going to make information sharing a whole lot easier both ways. And it's going to make everything a lot more efficient if and when a crisis comes. You know, there's that old saying that the best time to patch the roof is when the sun is shining. Then once we build those trusted relationships, we can more possibly do things like bring you in on close hold operations, and we can more confidently provide you with sensitive leads. But none of this works if compromises don't get reported to us in the first place. We just cannot help you if we don't know there's an issue in the first place, nor can we warn and protect others. So our approach is victim-centered because it helps us help you. It helps us help others who may be in danger. And it helps us use the intelligence we receive to take actions and run operations to defeat our adversaries. So through that process, that virtuous cycle where we share, analyze, repeat, we can protect our nation's networks. As an example, most of you will probably remember the cyber attack on Colonial Pipeline in 2021, which of course led to a fuel panic along America's East Coast. Once Colonial was compromised, they quickly engaged Mandiant to help with incident response. And as a result of their combined cooperation with the FBI and the fast, open sharing of timely, relevant, and accurate information, we were able to focus on our investigation and quickly made substantial breakthroughs. At the same time, the information shared by Colonial and Mandiant allowed the FBI and our government partners to publish information related to the cyber criminals responsible for the attack and helped the public better prepare for possible future attacks. And Colonial benefited too. Because Colonial reached out so quickly, we were able to identify and seize the virtual currency wallets belonging to the hackers, getting back most of the ransom for Colonial and depriving the bad guys of their ill-gotten gains. Now, that's the kind of success that's possible when we all work together towards common goals, even if we may be approaching those goals from different angles. For those 115 years that I mentioned earlier, the Bureau has been charged with protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution. And as I tell every class of new agent graduates I speak to at Quantico, that's a pretty simple mission to say, but pretty profound to execute. And the FBI workforce goes to the ends of the earth, some cases literally, every day to achieve that mission. It's inspiring to watch. It's inspiring to be a part of. But we know that we cannot accomplish it on our own. We cannot do what we do. We cannot protect the American people without partners like you. So I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come to Washington, to listen to my thoughts, my requests, and to talk with each other about how we can strengthen our collective defense. And I want you to also know how grateful we are for your continued collaboration and cooperation and your willingness to share what you know with us as we work together to keep the country and the world safe. Thank you.